For the second time in 2 months, the Monetary Policy Committee is convening to address the media after its 2-day meeting. First, the central bank governor who heads the committee reels out its decisions. This includes to raise the monetary policy rate by 200 basis points, to adjust the asymmetric corridor around the MPR to plus 100 or minus 300 basis points, to retain the cash reserve ratio of deposit money banks at 45%, to adjust the cash reserve ratio of merchant banks from 10% to 14%, as well as retain the liquidity ratio at 30%.
The Monetary Policy
The governor of the central bank gives reasons for the decisions.
The considerations of the committee at this meeting focused on the current inflationary pressures and the need to anchor inflation expectations, as well as ensure sustained exchange rate stability.
Recently, the bank has continued to bear its mind on key issues that affect the economy. The Apex Bank boss seized the opportunity to clarify the bank's position on some of these issues.
For price discovery to happen, certain fundamentals or certain attributes need to be in place. And you would recall that there's been a whole myriad of different circulars that have come out over a period of time, which were designed to remove those distortions, such that the market became a lot freer and the concept of willing buyer and willing seller became something that was a lot easier to establish.
And on the Binance matter that has recently dominated conversations.
In this particular case, the responsibility for regulating cryptocurrency is not our own. It isn't ours. It is strictly that of the Security and Exchange Commission.
The next meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee is scheduled for May 20th and 21st, 2024. Before that time, though, the central bank expects a moderation in the inflation rate. Sarah Chimugu, Channels Television News.
All right, so that's all we're taking a look at with Mr. Marcelo Keke, who joins us virtually. He is an economist. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. So yes, that meeting held yesterday, but, well, I know several people may wonder, okay, yeah, they've gone ahead and raised that, but how, if you start by giving us, first of all, your general impression of what you came out with, having listened to that briefing by the CBN Governor.
Well, thank you for having me once again on this program. The first impression is to say congratulations to the Central Bank of Nigeria for the Naira getting some strength, you know, in the foreign exchange market, okay, in line with the expectation of the Apex Bank. But the movement of the MPR by 6 basis points in a matter of 1 or 2 months, first of all from 18.75% to the 2.75%, and just a day or two ago to 24.75% in this economy. It could be counterproductive. As the CBN Governor mentioned, that they want to fight inflation as well as stabilize the exchange rate in the FX market. It is doubtful if this method will achieve that intention. First of all, fighting inflation, like I said the other time, and I want to repeat, that inflation is a multi-pronged, multifaceted issue. There are so many factors that contribute to the runaway inflation trend we have been experiencing in this economy for quite some time now. Okay, so for the Central Bank of Nigeria to believe that it will use that instrument of raising the MPR consistently to fight inflation or to tame inflation, at the risk of, being immodest, I would say he's foolhardy. Okay? Because, for instance, we all know that food inflation is the major factor in the components of the drivers of the hyperinflation I've been talking about, food inflation. To what extent will the raising of MPR, help in moderating food prices? To what extent? And I said it here before, that the situation on ground has pushed the Central Bank of Nigeria, the monetary authorities, to be doing all kinds of experimentations, all kinds of trial and error, some of them panic measures. Okay? How do you now put what the Central Bank Governor has said in terms of using the MPR increase to fight inflation, and the 100 billion fertilizer or cash that it donated to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security the other day, and also said you want to use it to fight inflation by increasing food production and supply to the market. Meanwhile, the current leadership of the CBN has vowed never to go back to the old days of doling out money, in terms of interventions to the agri sector and other sectors of the economy. So you can see policy inconsistency. It is panic measure.
Yeah, but
the CBN has also said it there.
Pardon me,
that they have been turning out.
What did you expect them to do? Were they supposed to have? Did you expect that they continue with that policy of acting as intervention banks?
That is the wrong thing to do, because the experience of the immediate and remote past is nothing to write home about. He also said during his appearance at the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria dinner in September last year, that about 10 trillion naira, is either lost or is being investigated, that we are committed to various intervention programs in terms of agriculture and related areas by the immediate past leadership of the Central Bank. And he said because of that, they were not going to toe that part. And so all of a sudden, a week or two ago, he came back to be giving 100 billion to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, which means he's gone back to his vomit, kind of. You understand? Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Okeke, I do not know if you're referring to the fertilizer that was given to the Ministry of Agriculture, which was worth that amount, because that question was also posed to him during the MPC briefing, when it was that journalists were allowed to ask questions. And that question came in about whether it was a return to the interventionist policy. And he seemed very clear on that, saying that no, that was a remnant or a residue, those were his words, residue of what was left from what they had, and they just put it in the right place where it belonged. Can you really say that that is a return to a vomit, or just doing the right thing and ensuring that resources that we had did not waste?
There's always a way to justify whatever they do. Let me tell you, nothing compels them to donate the 100 billion worth of fertilizer, for instance. Because if you are donating 100 billion worth of fertilizer, must the CBN do that as Central Bank of Nigeria? I don't want to go into how they arrived at, that volume or quantum or what of fertilizer, but the issue is, into what activity or program of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture is it keen? Okay? Is it just to drop that volume or quantum of fertilizer? For what purpose? At the end of the day, will the intention, will the intendment of that action be achieved? In terms of increasing productivity in the agriculture sector, and by that means increasing the volume of food supply, and by that means impacting inflation in a way that inflation will start coming down. No, look at this scenario. Will it work out that way? Well, whether in the short term or in the long term?
I'm not the spokesperson for the CBN Governor, and I really do wish that we could get the track, because he explained quite a bit on that particular question, when he was asked, and he said that as far as he's concerned, is just returning what he thinks ought to be returned to the appropriate agency of government that has the discretion to be able to use it properly for the benefit of the country. But, I want to take you back, the last time that you were here. I know that you know, recently we had cause to bring you, and you were talking about increased transparency when the CBN did say that it had cleared the backlog of FX, and you said that you wanted to see increased transparency. You wanted to know how that had happened. From the explanation that we got yesterday, because that question was also posed, and he also gave you know, some clarity to the volume that was what he deemed illegal. I think he said it was $2.4 billion. Are you satisfied with the explanation that has been given so far on some of the questions with regards to FX backlog? And given the fact that there's been some consistency now, we've seen the Naira continue to gain to some extent, would you say that maybe this policy, this upward trend of the Naira is here to stay?
Well, thank you. Every economic agent, every person in this economy, you know, wishes that the Naira begins to gain strength. And the past couple of days, like you rightly said, that appears to have been happening, you know, gradually and all that. But the point is, where is the dollar used to strengthen the Naira coming from? Yes, he claimed they have cleared the backlog. But around the same time, international airlines, you know, did also come up to say that they are not sure that their own backlog has been cleared. And that issue is yet to be clarified. I wasn't where the CBN governor, you know, addressed the media. That issue is still hanging. That is on one hand. On the other hand is this fact that the public, the investing public, Nigerians want to know, where is the dollar flowing from that is sustaining the market? And let me tell you, we are going into this policy somersault again. For instance, do you see what the Central Bank of Nigeria is doing with, or to, or for the Bureau de Change, you know, in a couple of days? Bringing them back, you know, some of licenses withdrawn, now come back, now we'll be giving you 10,000 at this exchange rate of 1,251 Naira, and you go and sell at not more than so percentage and all that. So looking at the way that is being done, as an active observer in this economy, would you have predicted that this kind of thing will happen within so short a time? So the central bank is trying all kinds of things. That's the way I put it. It's trying all kinds of things to see what works out. And the economy is not run on that kind of trial and error. It puts confusion in the mind of, you know, key operators in the economy. You understand? So the challenge is that if I now follow what the CBN has said today, tomorrow, will it continue on that track? That's the question. Well, if I follow what he said today, tomorrow, will it continue on that track?
So, Mr. Okeke, there are a couple of things that stick out from what you're saying. But before we get back to taking a look at that 2.4 billion question mark for some of the banks of which they're investigating now, are you saying that they are just supposed to try a particular policy, stick with it, go with it, whether it fails or not? Because there are those who will say, well, whatever they might be trying, errors, yes, but there are some results which should be encouraged.
Well, if they are experimenting with the economy, it will also be nice for them to let the public know the approach they adopted. But the issue of speaking as, you know, experts, which they do, and then acting as, if you like, neophytes or rookies, because that's what it is. I am talking about the articulate operators, both local and foreign, the way they'll be seeing what is going on in the Nigerian economy. Does it give confidence? That is the overarching question. Does it give confidence? You understand?
So what is the key thing? What is the key thing that sticks out now that you think doesn't give confidence? Which of those policies do you think might have been reacted to or come across negatively?
The things that don't give confidence is, one, there's no transparency as to the way the FX market is being run, which now gives, you know, this impression that the Naira is gaining some strength. In terms of where the money is coming from, there's no transparency in that regard. There's no transparency in terms of the fact that anybody could have expected that the Bureau de Change will be brought back the way they are brought back. There's no transparency in terms of how the CBN arrived at giving them $10,000 And in terms of giving them the exchange rate at which they'll be selling and buying, there's no transparency in terms of what the CBN has told the Nigerian customs. At the rate of exchange, they'll be collecting their duties and so on and so forth. So the CBN governor has also said it. All you see, a barrage of, memos to the bank, to the deposit money banks on a daily basis.
Okay.
You understand? Like I said here the other time, banks are businesses. So by the time this barrage of memos, canceling one position, changing it the next day, and going back to the old one, keeps going, it causes confusion. Let me tell you as we speak. As we speak, you know that because of these policy inconsistencies, no bank in this economy has been able to get its 2023 annual report and account approved by the Apex Bank. Not talk about any of them fixing to hold annual general meeting. So the whole thing are now kept holding. I mean, they are now withheld.
We'll speak a little more of that.
And that
so tell us then,
for the economy.
What will transparency mean? How will that be seen? What steps should have been taken for you to then say, well, yes, this is the transparency I've been talking about?
Transparency will mean the central bank governor saying we have borrowed X trillion, X million of dollar from so quarters, whether within or from outside this economy, and that is what we are applying, in the FX market, and that is why the naira seems to be stabilizing. I am saying this because we are worried. You are a major. I mean, you are an active observer of this economy over the years. That you may not know until it gets too late. Now, looking back to the Buhari era, that's what we are suffering now. How much they borrowed is becoming more, clearer to us. So the current people should be telling us, look at, we have borrowed so much. This is coming from this place. This is coming from that. We have mortgages in getting this money, and that is what we are using to fund the market. That is not happening. Because from what me and you, from what we know, the dollar is not flowing in, from so many sources officially, other than the crude oil export, and, maybe some remittances here and there that don't amount to much. So for the central bank to have cleared 7 billion within this time and, in quote, comfortably, funding the FX market is suspicious, to say the least. You understand? And the earlier they clarify this position, that the whole public comes to know, the better for them, the better for the economy, the better for Nigeria, and the better for everybody.
Tell us a little bit more about this $2.4 billion Forex claim, which the CBN say is invalid from that $7 billion backlog. So they say, yes, they're investigating this matter. But there are those who've got the impression that the banks, there were several underhand dealings that went on. And some of the banks had to do it because because if they didn't, they might have fallen off the curve. And so they had no choice. What should we expect from this sort of investigation? Because you've been a chief economist of a bank.
Thank you. I have always said it, that in the banking industry, they are really bad eggs. You understand? And that the system always looks out for opportunities. I mean, people, various banks always look out for opportunities, that could arise in the system. And they run their business to exploit those opportunities as they arise. I'm also, to a large extent, blaming the Central Bank of Nigeria, because the deposit money banks are seriously, regulated, seriously supervised. And so, if any of these transactions, didn't go well, as at the time they were consummated, the Central Bank was and is still in the best position to identify those things and corrected, the various banks and even punish them, as at the time those transactions took place. Now, to be doing these things in retrospect and investigating here and there, I mean, is a way of, proving themselves to be angels and the banks complicit. It's not like that. But the activities of banks are regulated and they are supervised 24/7.
Okay, help us understand this a little bit more. When you use the word in retrospect, the law is the law. If they broke the law today or 5 years ago, and then they're being investigated 3 years after, is there anything wrong with that? Because they knew that this is what the law says? Are they going to say, because the regulatory body was looking the other way, that gave them, as you said, opportunity to do what they had to do, which is tantamount to breaking the law?
No, I said the investigation is all right.
Okay.
But that the Apex Bank should take major chunk of the blame for that to have happened in the first place. Do you understand? Because the banks report to the Apex Bank on a daily basis, even hourly, because of the power of technology. The CBN, the Apex Bank, looks at what the banks are doing on an ongoing basis. Do you understand? Real-time basis. Do you understand? So for this volume of transactions to have escaped, you know, their purview or escape their investigation, escape their eyes this at that point in time is why I'm saying that they should bear greater part of the blame. That's the point.
The way this comes across, perhaps you shed a little more light, is that banks do what they do, and probably if the regulatory body just sits there and just keeps watching and doesn't call them to order, they will continue because they were not called to order, thinking that that means that inaction means that it's okay to keep going. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Do you understand that the transactions we are talking about, you know, could be as a result of human error? It could be error, either human error or even technology error, IT error in processing those things. You understand? Or it could be a question of where you have 12 apostles, you have a Judas. You know, so when you put all these together, that's what could amount to that amount of transaction we're talking about.
Yeah, but Mr. Kike,
yes,
we know that if it's to the tune of $2.4 billion, and it's not the first time that we have heard that banks do some of these things, if it's human error, if they've got nothing to worry about, I mean, they've not done anything, no skeleton in the cupboard, should they be worried?
Well, you can see everything in Nigeria. Do you see that even the CBN Governor is saying that the activities of Binance we are talking about is not within their purview? It's within the purview of Securities and Exchange Commission. So this one of the bank that is within their purview, meaning they were lax about it. You understand? They were lax about it. So that's why it took place. It's not to say that that's the right thing for the banks to be doing. It's not to say there is opportunity that banks are exploiting. But that is to say that the central bank must share, you know, in the blame for that to have happened. That's the point I'm making. I am not here exonerating the banks. I've also said there are bad eggs in the system. You understand? I've also said some people could see it as opportunity and, you know.
Well, I know you know, just like everybody else knows, that the former CBN governor is under trial right now and is answering questions. So if he's answering questions, any bank who did it, if it's human error, fine. If it's whatever error, fine. But they will equally answer questions. So that's the way it should go, shouldn't it?
I agree with you. All I'm saying is that the Apex Bank, even now, is not a cent. And so even the now? Apex Bank, the CBN governor should have been, is it polite or modest enough to have accepted that, you know,
I know my colleagues will come into, but what do you mean by the CBN governor, even now, is not a saint? What does that mean?
What that means is that they have to take part of the blame for allowing or having that volume of fraud, if you like, or improper recording or improper transaction to have taken place. You understand? For the Apex Bank, whether he was there that time or was not there that time, for that to have taken place, he would have blamed the institution that he now said that he didn't do the needful properly. That's the point I'm making.
I do not know if a lot of Nigerians will agree with you as to whether you can take responsibility for something that did not happen under your watch. But we do know that, I mean, as you have also admitted that the current, and my colleague has highlighted, that the current CBN or the former CBN governor is undergoing trial for some of these things that were noticed during his time as CBN governor. I'm just moving on now, because some people will say that while it is that, you know, the CBN has now raised, or the Monetary Policy Committee has now raised interest rates by another 200 basis points to 24.75%. And you have said that, no, that cannot be the way to go. Some people say that it's not altogether bad, given the fact that a lot of Nigerians have not been able to save in recent times. Nobody trusts the fixed market. People are not putting their money in fixed deposit. People are not. And ideally, what the CBN says its mandate is, stricto sensu, is to fight inflation and also to ensure price stability. What we've been seeing happening in recent times is that prices have been running away with the wind. Nobody was even able to operate, in the last couple of weeks, even months, as a result of instability in the economy. Would you say that, from what we have seen now, it does appear that the measures that they put in place some 6 weeks ago has ensured, you can disagree with that if you'd like, has ensured that there's been some stability. So in this sense, would you say that the CBN is really back facing its core mandate of ensuring and achieving too the mandate of price stability and taming inflation? Inflation too is still a long way from being tamed, but at least there's some stability. Would you say that it's back to doing that?
Thank you. About inflation, they are fighting, like I always said. It's driven by so many factors. So for the CBN to believe that its monetary policies alone will tame inflation, it's a wrong mindset, like I said. Let me tell you, the APR that is being raised, once they raise the APR, it's an indicative rate. It tells the banks, deposit money bank, that we are going up. It's a tight monetary environment. You understand? So what that means is that access to loans, to the economic agent is being denied. Because if you are in any business, you think about yourself. If you are in any business and interest rate is 30-something%, will you go into it? If you borrow at that rate from any bank, what business are you in for you to make a turnover and then have substantial to pay the interest and pay the principal when they fall due? And moreover, if you factor the cost of money, which is that interest rate is, into your cost of operation, what that means is that when you produce whatever you are producing, you are going to transfer it to the ultimate consumer. And that, rather than bringing down inflation, will be driving it up. That is the way it goes. Do you understand? So, and that is why I said here the other day, and I want to repeat it. The Apex Bank must work very closely with the physical side of the economy so that they come to an agreement as to what will be happening on this side and the other side. Many of the activities in the physical side are acting as counterpoints, you understand, to what the CBN is doing. And so at the end of the day, inflation will keep running away. Because as we speak, at the last time it was measured, it is now at 1.7%. You understand? That is February this year, okay? And if you look at from January last year, it's been on this upward trajectory. And what the CBN is doing cannot tame inflation. Officially, it's not possible.
Well, the CBN has admitted that indeed there are a number of other things that need to be done. I mean, he also spoke about food inflation and the fact that, food shortages are some of the things that are driving inflation. Logistics, the logistics chain, which is supposed to also help take food to the market, etc. I don't know whether it is that we're seeing enough being done in that particular area. Maybe that also speaks to the question which you raised earlier about, what impact the fertilizer donated to the Ministry of Agriculture is supposed to have. Would you say that on the fiscal side, are we seeing enough being done to ensure that Nigerians have sufficient food and at the right price?
Thank you. A lot needs to be done. A lot needs to be done. Starting first and foremost from the issue of security or insecurity in the land. Because the food we are talking about are produced by people, majorly farmers. As we speak now, are farmers free to go to their farms? Whether we are talking about, large-scale farmers or subsistence farmers, are they free now to go back to their farms and farm? And if they produce whatever, at what cost do they bring them to the market? And so on and so forth. So the government has to start from the basics, and that basics is handle the insecurity in the land. Let farmers go back to the land and begin to farm. You understand? Before you now start donating fertilizer, like the fertilizer you're talking about that is donated, who is going to use it? Who is going to utilize it? Many of the farmers are from the areas we call food basket, in quote, of this economy. And those people have been so attacked that the farmers have been dislodged and displaced. Most of them are living in entirely displaced camps or IDP camps. Yes, entirely displaced persons camps all over the country. So how will they farm? How will the cost of food be brought down? Even if the government wants to be importing it, it will now go to put pressure on the forest market because you're going to use dollar to be importing food. And if you do that, is it sustainable for us in this economy? So you can see that the government has a lot to do, you know, for actual farming and production and productivity in the agri sector, you know, to go up, to handle that issue of insufficiency of food. That is why it is laughable that the Central Bank of Nigeria has got to donate whether fertilizer or the 100 billion. You know, at a point in this economy, what do we call it, pyramid, rice pyramid, was launched at Abuja with all kinds of fanfare and fanfare, if you like. At the end of the day, where is it and where has it led on to? So there's a lot of politics and a lot of throwing money after the problem. You throw a lot of money. That's how there were a lot of interventions in the agri sector by the past administration or leadership in the CBN. They keep putting money here and there all over the place. At the end of the day, the problem we have now is to bring back the money or to even see clearly where the money went and what we achieved. Where is the impact? You understand? So
okay, well, it's okay. My apologies for butting in because as we're running out of time. But you know that you began by appreciating the efforts of the CBN in ensuring that the Nigerian currency, the naira, is appreciating. But on the that's on the one hand. On the other hand, there are those who believe that the raising of the interest rate is one of those things that one of the advantages or one of the consequences is currency appreciation, because for instance, some believe that higher interest rates make a country's currency more attractive to foreign investors seeking higher returns on their investments. But then you also say that there isn't any transparency in how these things are happening. I'm trying to understand.
Well, transparency in terms of where we are sourcing the dollar that is making naira gain some strength in the foreign exchange market.
You just notice now that, do you agree, just a second, Mr. Okeke, do you agree that higher interest rates is capable of making the country's currency appreciate?
Let me tell you, I said it here the other day. And let me repeat it, that when you raise your interest rate, for instance, the way we have raised, and the Central Bank of Nigeria applied the instrument that called OMO, Open Market Operation, to sell treasury bills, and they invited, you know, foreign investors, foreign portfolio investors. You understand? They did get some dollars that those people brought in. But I'm saying that is exposing this economy to what is called hot money. Hot money. In other words, the high interest rate in this economy was used to woo and lure those foreign portfolio investors, and they brought in their money. And I also said that that kind of money is so mobile that as it's coming into Nigeria, the people that brought it are looking around, you know, for other jurisdictions where they will quickly take such money to. And when you're operating with hot money, you know, it doesn't give you the confidence. It doesn't give you the stability of mind. It doesn't give you the time to even plan and utilize the money that comes in. And this economy has the problem of when those people that brought in foreign portfolio investment want to cash out, we have the problem of where do we now get the dollar, you know, for them to cash out. That is why many investors have been trapped in this economy. And that is why their recent experiences have, you know, left us worse off.
So the issue for you is not about the strategy, but it's about the sustainability, if I'm getting you right.
You are right to an extent. Yes, sustainability and the consequences, the impact is likely to have on the economy.
Okay.
You understand? The economy
yes.
does well and better in the mid to long term basis rather than the short term. On the short term, yes, we have gotten something. And I agree with you.
Okay, but there is another consequence a number of people have also looked at in that regard, and that is on the cost of borrowing in the banks, the higher borrowing costs. That those who believe that higher interests on loans and mortgages would increase making borrowing more expensive for consumers and businesses. Now, that's definitely a concern one way or the other. Do you think there is an option to that, particularly because it could stifle businesses and particularly more small and medium enterprises may go under? How can that be prevented?
Thank you. You see, what you have just said now about of the dangers that I've been warning about, with respect to what the Central Bank of Nigeria is doing. You understand? It's like throwing away the baby with the bathwater. You are trying to get away from the old ways the CBN were operating to do this. At the end of the day, they will end up inadvertently killing businesses. You understand? So what they should have done, you understand, is to apply holistically, various instruments and have harmonized blueprint, if you like, with the physical side of the economy, so that this economy comes up with an overarching development plan, whether for the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, going forward. But what appears to be happening now is that the CBN is packaging this in and operating in its own silo, if you like. So that is why it is doing everything, possible by his own thinking to tame inflation. But in trying to tame inflation, you can see that it could be stifling businesses, like I said. So the CBN doesn't have all the instruments. It doesn't have all the instruments to be the one controlling inflation just on its own.
But the country, there are those who would say that the country has some other instruments. For instance, the Bank of Industry tends to have the facilities for small businesses, to lower interest rates. Isn't that something that the government can also leverage?
That is correct. That's correct. But the Bank of Industry we are talking about, what is the scale of its operation? How much is available to it? And to what extent will it cope? Be it the sole body, if you like, that will be financing the industrial sector, like you said. To what extent? And given the record, its historical record in the past couple of years has been operating, the scope is limited. You understand? And so if the SMEs also depend on it, and major companies also depend on it, will it be able to carry on? Will it be able to meet the requirements and expectations for everybody? You understand?
Well, there are those who would say,
the government should do everything to empower the BOI and similar institutions.
All right, if you can do this.
So that the CBN doesn't see itself as the only one that will keep raising the interest rate, claiming that it is driving the development of the economy.
Talking about collaboration, now you have also agreed that the Bank of Industry is some other instrument of government to help stem the tide that we have at this time. And the CBN, as you said, is also doing its own level best. What other instruments of state do you think there are that can foster collaboration, which can also help to improve the economy? What collaborative instruments can we use? If we can do that, just list them and do this in about 30 seconds.
Well, I am not in government because a lot depends on the government. I don't want to go back to the era of intervention. I have said that, for instance, the Bank of Industry should be strengthened and empowered. You also should know that there's the Bank of Agriculture. You understand? I don't know whether that has gone into oblivion or has gone moribund. It should also be functioning, especially at this point in time. You understand? So if it's functioning, Bank of Industry is functioning, the CBN is functioning, you understand? Mortgage banks are functioning, okay? The oil sector, are functioning in terms of increasing oil production and export to bring in more dollars and all that. So all this working together will conduce, to a sustainable growth and recovery of the economy, if you like.
Absolutely.
But as we speak now, you know, many of these things are not working together. Or
I think I like the hopeful tone, Mr. Okeke. I think I like the hopeful tone that you ended with. let's just keep it at that for now. But I mean, it's been very, very illuminating. Thank you so much this morning for being with us. Marcel Okeke is an economist. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. Yeah.